I know as you are raised in the church and you're taught that God is this ultimately loving parent, the loving Heavenly Father, like he will endlessly forgive you and endlessly love you until you get to the problem of, dying without professing faith in Jesus, right? And then suddenly this loving God turns into someone that I think appears to be worse than Hitler, or just like the worst tyrant that history has ever known, that he suddenly turns his back on you, and it's completely not consistent. So in my book Raising Hell, I actually have a whole section about how God, the true character of God, is compared to loving parents. And for me, there can be no inconsistency. If you consider yourself a loving parent and you are supposedly out of God, there's no way that your love could surpass the love that God has for his children if he is indeed a loving parent. And you can just look at any loving parent and look at the characteristics of that parent, or, a set of parents. And there's many characteristics you could come up with, but, for one, and maybe the most important, is a loving parent always intends good for their children. It doesn't matter what that child does throughout its lifetime. The ultimate job of that parent is to see that child through life and to help them shape them into a kind, loving, contributing member of society. And the only way to do that is through a loving, consistent approach. So, that brings up the next thing. A loving parent is consistent. You don't see one parent, like a set of parents. And I actually have heard of this happening where a set of parents would treat one child differently. I don't know if you ever came across Dave Pelzer's story in A Child Called It. He has a trilogy of his experiences growing up, and he was kind of the targeted child in a family of his parents for just horrible abuse. And the other children in the family, got to live in just a kind of a normal kid life. They got to sleep in beds, and they got to eat food, and they got to go to school and go on the family outings, and they were treated as beloved children of the family. But for some reason, David was singled out, and they starved him. That, his mom would put him in like freezing and scalding baths, and she, wouldn't let him go on the family outings. They made him sleep out in the garage. I mean, everybody would look at a parent like that and just think they need to be locked up somewhere, Yet that's the kind of image that we've pinned on God in the way that he supposedly views and treats different children in the family. But so you just look at the philosophical arguments of what a loving parent is or does, and you should be able to have a correlation to the supposed loving heavenly parent. And if that parent is abusing the children or murdering them, or torturing them, then he is not a loving parent. And I don't think that most Christians stop and think about the implications of their faith and how they portray God, because I didn't, I didn't ever really stop and think of the philosophical playing out the scenarios. But loving parents are gracious and they're accommodating. If their child is acting out, they can look back and say, well, that child has been sick this week. And, if you correlate that to God, God could say, well, that child has grown up without a father. And of course he's angry and he's acting out, or she's angry, and you study a loving, healthy set of parents, and God's character should be more consistent and more loving than the best of what we have. And if it's not, then there's something wrong with your story. Either you've created a monster of a God in your head, or this God isn't worth loving, or you're wrong. So you have to kind of decide which is it, I think also just the last thing is that loving parents always hope. They're always looking for the best in their kids, and a loving parent never gives up hope that they will be restored to relationship with their child. That's kind of the story of the prodigal son. The father never stopped searching the horizon for that son to come home. And when he did, what did he do? Did he, berate him and cast him out? No, he was waiting with the fattened calf and the robe and the ring, to honor the son. And he said, my son was dead and he's alive. My son was lost and now he's found. And so that's what a loving parent does. They never give up.